Hey everybody, it's EJ from eyedesyn.com, and today we're going to have fun using Cinema 4D to create this fun little tropical little countdown kind of element. And I saw this during the Rio Olympics. They had this projected onto the arena court thing, whatever, the stadium field, and I thought it was really cool and figured it'd be fun to break down and create in Cinema 4D. So let's just jump right in here. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and create our text elements here. So I'm just going to create a new Illustrator file, and I'm going to show you the reason why I'm building my text in Illustrator here. And what I'm going to do is get the text tool here. I'm going to choose Rockwell. Really like how Rockwell looks. So I should probably type something first. So let's do, say, 3. So the number 3, make that a little bigger. And let's make it, let's do the extra bold. And then we'll just go ahead and expand that whole thing right there, that whole number. And now we released it to its points and stuff like that. And what we can do now is we can get creative with if we want to round out any of these bits here. So I think what I'll do is to make some stylistic kind of choices. Is I think I'm just going to go in here. I'm going to click that point and just round out that little bit right there. Because when we extrude that out, we can have a mix of rounded edges and then sharper edges. It will kind of help the composition a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting. And again, since we're bringing this into 3D, some of the rounder edges might have nicer like specular highlights and stuff like that. So just messing around with how that looks. And so once we get it to how we like our text or how our number to look, with the rounding and all that stuff, we can go ahead and select our layer again, go to Path, and we're going to go to Offset Path. And the reason why I'm doing all this in Illustrator is because of the Offset Path or Offset Spline options in Cinema 4D are a little bit weird. We have a little bit like overlapping stuff that happens in Cinema 4D that I don't really like very much, but you can see we have our little outline, and we'll probably have to kind of take care of some things in here, but let's just hit OK. That offset of 18 looks pretty good, and now we can go into these individual points here and just kind of delete. Let's first make a new layer and bring our little outline out from underneath. So just rename this layer outline, and this will be just 3. And we'll delete that extra layer. And now we can hide our 3 and just go in here and try to select just those bits in the middle there, these dang points. There we go. There we go, and delete that. All right. So again, we can go into like say these points right here and maybe delete that extra one. Let's make sure. I think this isn't completely closed, so I can go to my pen tool here and make sure that that is closed. There we go. Now it's a complete path, and now I can select both of these points and kind of round them out a little bit. So just the same kind of thing we did with our original number, where we're just kind of rounding out certain aspects of our number here. So now we have our outline. Can make this a lighter color and turn back on our original number, and there we go. We have our inner and outer number right here. So again, the reason why I did this is just because the outline spline feature in Cinema 4D gives you overlapping splines, and there's a lot more cleanup involved than if you did it in Illustrator. So that's just kind of my preference. So I'm gonna go ahead and save this, and I'll just name this Rio number 3, And again, because we're going to bring this into Cinema, we need to make sure we do the obligatory thing of saving as Illustrator 8, because Illustrator 8 is the only format that is cool enough to high-five Cinema 4D and import paths from Illustrator into Cinema. So I'll just save that, hit OK, and then we can jump into 3D World, open up a new project, and we're going to merge that Cinema 4D file, or that Illustrator file, and I'm going to say that's all good. We can group the splines, that's fine. And what we need to do is just zero out these coordinates. And an easy way to zero everything out is just holding the control key down and just clicking these arrows right there, and that'll zero out everything. So nice little handy tip, holding control and clicking the arrows, and that'll zero that option out. So now we have our inner path, or just our number, and then our outline, or just 3 outline, I'll name this. So our paths from Illustrator as splines in Cinema 4D. And now what we can start doing is extruding time. And let's just go ahead and we'll extrude the 3 first, and just rename that. And we'll give this fillet cap of 3 steps, and then say a radius of 1, and the same thing there. So we have some nice rounded bevels. Let's see, let's go and make this a little bit thicker, say, yeah, 50 is good. And now we can do the same thing and extrude our 3. But first thing we need to do is actually, we want to like inverse this and just have this outline 3 cut out of, say, like a giant rectangle. So let's just go ahead and do that. And let's get a rectangle and bring it down here. And what we're going to do is use, what menu is it? There it is, spline mask. We're going to use the spline mask. We are going to basically subtract the 3 outline from the rectangle. So we're going to go to our spline mask. We're going to say A subtract B, and there we go. We have our rectangle that has the 3 outline cut out from it, and we can make this rectangle a little bit bigger. So now you can see we have like our outline. Now all we have to do is go ahead and extrude our spline mask group, and you can see now we have that little outlined element, like slab element, with that 3 outline cut out of it. So this is the 3 outline, and we can just go ahead and we'll make this about 2 centimeters deep. And again, we'll do a fillet cap and give it 3 steps. And for this, we'll just give it a very small radius of 0.5, and we will create a single object there, just so we have some nicer edges going on. And now we can start working with all this stuff. So let's just turn off our 3 for now. Somehow I got an extra extrude in there. I'll delete that guy. And now we can start cloning our outline. So we'll just drag our 3 outline extrude into the cloner and go to the default options and play around with some of the settings in here. We'll just zero out the Y. And what we're going to do is turn off fixed clone. We're going to turn on render instances, because what we're going to do is crank up our count, and we're just going to move this in the Z. So say like negative 750 or so, and we can zoom out here. And what I want to do is not do per step, but to endpoint. And you're going to see that that really jacked up our value here. So we're going to do negative 750, and then basically what that is going to do is make sure that whatever clones we have in there, it's going to be spread out over the span of 750 centimeters in the negative Z. So we can adjust this as much as we want and really make this as dense as we want and not have to mess around with that endpoint. So I just like to work that way. So let's do 75 there. So every 10 centimeters is a extra bit there, or a clone. And we can turn back on our 3. There we go. So there's our main 3. And let's create a camera here. Look through it, and we're gonna give this some like extreme depth perspective from our focal length and stuff like that. So now we got this nice depth of field angle going on, looking nice. You can see how our nice rounded edges look cloned here. So again, that is something that you can kind of mess around with when you're building your letter. I'm just going to move my letter in this little tunnel that we made here a little bit, just so we have some clones behind it as well. And now what we can start doing is animating all these clones, right? We want this nice undulation that we had from my example here. So we got really nice undulation, really nice calming effect. It's like you're at the Mograph ocean, right? And the wave of clones are coming in. So the way I did that was just went up to my Mograph menu, went to my random effector, and this looks great. Done, print it, charge the client. No, this looks like garbage. So we're going to turn off our position here. We don't want position. We're just going to deal with scale. And right now, if we start adjusting these values here, and you're going to notice I'm not going to adjust the Z because I don't want these to get randomly thicker. I don't want my clones to get thicker in the Z, so I'm just going to mess around with the X and the Y and say let's do like 2 and 1.5. And the random mode, I want to actually control the speed. So what I'm going to do is go down to Turbulence, and I like using Turbulence in Random Effectors because you control the size of the scale or the turbulence, the size of the turbulence or the noise by using this. So that if you make this bigger, it'll make the noise bigger as well. And we can also control the animation speed here. And I'm going to turn on Synchronize just so everything is kind of in sync as far as the values changing over time. Since I'm dealing with 2 scale values, I want them to increase in size exponentially or link together. And then what we can do is hit play, and you can see that we're having this overlap. And so what I'm going to do to try to mitigate that is bringing this minimum in, just so we set how far in or how far in the negative values of negative scale we go. So you can see that as I'm clamping this up, you can see that it's not getting quite as small, but you can see that we still have that undulation going on. I can actually increase this above 100%, so this will actually scale exponentially from this. So if my maximum's 200, that actually remaps the scale value for X and Y to double that. So this would actually be a max scale of 4 in X or 3 in Y. So just how that works. And we're also clamping in the negative values with this minimum value as well. So we can bring down the animation speed here to say, like 15, something like that. And we can bring down the scale because we want a lot of ripples to be made out here. So you can see we have some really nice undulations going. We turn the speed down so it's a lot more nice looking, and we can adjust this minimum value to say like 30. So that's a nice little range we have there. So what I actually want to do is we're going to probably increase in the X a little bit more, and maybe in the Y a little bit as well. So I don't want as much in the Y, just because I like having this nice flatter areas at the top and bottom, just a little bit, so you can see a little bit of what's going on, where it's a little bit more uniform and flat, but then on the edges where the details of that 3 are, starts to really look a little bit more interesting, and they're moving a lot more. Alright, so now what I want to do is add an extra layer of randomness, because we have our nice medium-sized undulation going on. What I want to do with this next random effector is make giant turbulence waves with this one, and maybe get a little bit less crazy with the value. So let me make sure I apply this new random effector in here. And you can see the difference between adding that extra wave where it has the bigger size turbulence there. Maybe turn this down a little bit so we can adjust this minimum and maximum too as well. So maybe we're just going to clamp this a little bit more. Really bring this up so you can tell the difference between that single random effector and then adding the second one. Adds a little bit more interesting movements there. We have this bigger, nice, these nice larger bits of undulation, and then the smaller noise going at the same time. So I like it. It makes me happy. So we can just start messing around with this a little bit more, make that second noise a little bit more pronounced. So before and then after, just adds a nice little extra layer of noise. And now, let's first save this, just in case I screw it up. So Rio number 3. And I had a C4D in there, whoops. So now we can start coloring this and texturing. And new to R17 is something that's very handy when trying to color a bunch of clones or just any kind of objects that you have a lot of and you want some variation added to it, and that is called the variation shader. I'm going to go down here and it's actually cut off. Let me do that again. It's right down here in effects and it's still cut off. Trust me, it's down there called variation shader. It's new to R17 and it's very nice and handy to be able to add variation to the colors or textures in general of your objects. So let me go into interactive render region here. I'm gonna make this smaller, and you can see that we have this nice like Easter themed like pastel thing going on here, and we have all these options that we can start messing around with as well. So the first thing we need to do is turn off random color, because we don't want that pastel stuff going on. What we're going to end up doing is creating our own gradient. So we have this gradient right here, and right now it goes from blue to white. And if I turn up this gradient blend, you're going to see that it starts randomly applying colors from this gradient. So we have some like darker blue values and some middle blue values and then some white values, all taken and sampled from this gradient here. But what I want to do is make this a nice tropical colored gradient, and actually I don't want any interpolation between any of the colors. So I'm just going to turn the interpolation from smooth to none. And another thing is I'm going to start adding some nice tropical colors to this gradient knot. So we'll have some like purple values and some yellow and some like teal. Actually, I already have teal. Let's make it a little lime green and some of this hot pink kind of action. And let's turn this blue to that kind of, maybe a lighter blue. Do we have that? Yep, we already have something like that. So I'll just get rid of that. And I'm going to right click and choose distribute knots, so that's going to even everything out. And you're still going to see that we still have like this pastel-y kind of thing going on. And the thing we need to do is change this gradient mode from normal to replace. And what that's going to do is just replace the color of whatever object you're applying it to. So we're not mixing it with anything else. We're not having that underlying light cream color or white color going on there. So now what we can do is let's just rename this to variation. Variation, right? Did I spell it? Variation. Yes, I can spell. And can probably actually change this to multiply and just crank up these values so it's a little bit brighter. It's like 110, brightness of 110. And let's go ahead and add a new material for our letter. So this is just our letter or number, and make that white, and just apply that to the number. And now let's add some nice lighting. So we're going to go and choose a spotlight, and let's just move this spotlight back and make this a little bit bigger. And what I'm going to do is add a fall off, so an inverse square. There we go. And I just want a little bit of like vignetting from this. So I'm going to move this out a little bit, and actually what I'm going to do is attach this light to my camera and just zero out the, again, I'm going to use control and just hit these little arrows to zero that out, just so I can use my camera as like a spotlight, shining, so I can aim my light with my camera like so. And let's actually bring our intensity down, I like to say 70. And let's add some soft shadows. What you're going to notice is that our soft shadows are pretty dark. And what we're going to do to kind of soften it a little bit is go ahead and bring up the sample radius. And that's just going to kind of smooth and blur out our shadow. So now it looks nice and more gradated, looking good. And now I'm going to go ahead and just adjust the specular on my variation material, just to make it a nice sharp kind of specular. And let's save this again. And what I'm going to do is, because if I adjust, I want a nice specular highlight around the rounding or the edges, bevel edges of my outer bit here. But you can see that if I really crank up my specular to get some nice highlights, number one. So I'm going to get these nice specular highlights, but also I'm also blowing out the rest of this material. So what I'm going to do is just reset this. And what I'm going to do is just create a new material. And this is just going to be called Variation Highlight. And actually what I could do, in case I need to go back and redo any of the colors on my variation shader, what I can do is go ahead and right-click the texture on my main variation shader and go Set Driver on the texture. And on my highlight, go and right-click on this and say Set Driven. And there we go. And that's gonna, whatever changes I make in my variation shader here will then copy over to here. So if I change the seed, it's also going to change the seed on this as well. So that was 12. So if I say 50, seed of 50, and I go over to here, it's the seed of 50 on my variation highlight. So the set driver, set driven, super useful expression. You can see I have a little expression that popped up right here that just kind of links the two. So that's, very handy, because if I end up changing the color, I would have to then copy all the changes over to this variation shader here. But really all I want to do is use this for the rounding. So let's go ahead and apply this to my extrude. And the selection I'm going to do is R1 for our front rounding. And now I can just isolate and really make a nice blown out specular highlight here. So you can see we got a nice highlight. That's a little bit too much though. So maybe something like that. I can also adjust my light. There we go, something like that. Just nice, not too hot, not too hot, not too cold, just right. Specular highlight. Okay, so that's nice, looking good. We can also just add like a little reflection to the highlight as well. And we'll just add that and change this attenuation to additive as well. And there we go, we got a little bit of highlight there. And let's just add a little bit of reflection. Change that to add, and then attenuation add, and just a tiny bit of reflection to our main variation shader. And then we'll just add a little bit of Fresnel dielectric, yeah, and yeah, just do a little bit of that. And maybe bring down the strength and the preset. We'll make this look plasticky. So we'll choose plexiglass there from the presets. And that really doesn't change too much, but you know what? It's just a subtle thing. All right, so let's see if we can adjust the shading a little bit, because I want it to get a little bit darker behind the 3 where our number is going to be. And I also don't want my number to cast any shadows, so I'm going to right click, go to compositing tag, and turn off cast shadows. There we go. So it looks nice like that. And let's see what this looks like. Whoop. So it's looking pretty good. We have the nice undulation. We have our nice shadows. And actually, that's really dark shadow being cast right there. So let's move our light forward a little bit, make our spotlight a little wider. Try to get rid of that really dark shadow going on there. Let's see, bring this in. Whoop, something like that. There we go. I think we got rid of our really dark shadows. Just scrub through this. So we just want these really nice shadows going on, and that's all due to the sample radius again. If it gets a little bit too dark, again, we can always say up the radius, sample radius a little bit more, so that's going to blur out our soft shadows. So that's looking nice. Another thing we can do is go into our variation shader and add some ambient occlusion to it. And this is going to be nicer than adding it scene wide, because scene wide it's going to take into account of all the objects in our scene, so even that number 3. Which we really don't even want to cast any ambient occlusion. So we're going to limit the calculations to just the objects with the variation shader texture on it by applying it with the diffusion. And we'll just say have that affect everything. And you can see that's going to add an even nicer ambient occlusion shadow onto our objects. Gives it a little bit more depth, gives our layers a little bit more pop from our cloner. This is a little slow, and this is actually overkill, so we can just do, whoop, that didn't help. I didn't mean to do that. Let's just do that to 20. And the accuracy for now, let's just do it very low for these values, just so we can have a quicker render. Let's see, 25. Cool. It's looking good. And actually, just for now, just for this demo, I'm not going to wait for the rendering to happen. I'm just going to turn it off for now, but turn it back on before you render. And actually, our specular is looking pretty hot, so I'm just going to bring down the color a little bit. There we go. That's not so crazy. And you know, so now we're at the tweaking phase of our animation, or of our whole entire project, where we can go ahead and kind of tweak the amount of clones we have. So say if we want to add even more clones, we can do that, make this even more colorful and add more layers to this. That actually looks pretty good. Or we can take some away, make even more, bigger gaps between these. So it's whatever you want to do. Go nuts adjusting everything. But now the final thing we need to do is adjust this 3 so we can have this kind of boop pop in. So let's just go ahead, and that's going to be its resting position. Let's do a little tilt to our rotation here on our camera, just to make this a little bit more interesting. It's a nice dynamic angle. Cool. And again, we have our light attached to it as well, so we can adjust that. We can bring the intensity down just a little bit. Looking good. Nice. I like this nice shading we have going on here as well. Let's just bring down the sample radius to like 11, so we can get a little bit darker there. Actually, no, that's a little too dark. We'll do 20. or just bring it back to 15. I don't know what I'm doing. There we go. 15's good. And let's set a keyframe for our 3 in the Z. And so that's going to be where it lands. And we're going to have it come up. And let's just rearrange our camera so the 3 is like coming through it like that. So that's a nice little transitional thing. So we're not actually intersecting the 3 with our camera. Cool. So maybe like this. There we go. So 3. And let's go into our timeline, do some keyframings. And so let's see. We're just going to have this quickly land, and then I'm going to duplicate this keyframe. We're just going to do some manual boinging. We're going to give a little springy boing to our animation. So I'm just going to lay out these keyframes here. So we have a decaying curve, animation curve here. So I'm going to overshoot it. And so we'll just get rid of, we just want this kind of slam in really quick. And do like that. And then have it undulate until it comes to a stop. And let's go into our F curve and just kind of smooth out these. I'm holding the shift key down just to constrain it to that 90 degrees. Just smooth out all our decayed curves here. There we go. And let's see how that looks. So we got boing. So that looks pretty good. We can add just one more keyframe right here. So it's a little bit gradual fall off there, a little gradual decay. Look at that. We're doing keyframe in the old-fashioned way. No delay effector or nothing. So we have this nice, it comes in, slams in, and looking good. Let's just have this go even deeper from the get-go, and that really comes back and tries to compensate there. All right, and the only thing is with the variation shader, everything looks white, and that kind of stinks. But that's what it's going to look like when it's all said and done. On the number here, I just want to tweak the specular here. I think I might have moved my camera. Let's see. Let's just tweak my specular. Make this a little darker and make this a sharper specular. My number so it's not so blown out looking. Make this base color a little grayer. There we go. So we just have a little bit more diffuse kind of showing through. We have a little darker edges. Looking nice. Something like that. Alright, I'm happier with that. And now, if you're okay with how the random stuff is going, with the nice undulations and stuff like that, you can go ahead and render that. And since we're doing like a countdown, we actually let's move this up. Since we're doing multiple numbers, we can easily just retain this whole project, right? And let's say we're gonna do number 2. So let's go ahead and we're not gonna do a number 2. We're making the number 2. That was bad wording. So let's save that. It's Rio number 2. And now we can go ahead, and I already made the number 2 from Illustrator. So I can just load that up. So we're just going to zero this out, holding Control, clicking these arrows, and 2, and outline 2. And basically we just copy these new splines over to our main composition here, right? And we're just going to replace all these elements. So bye-bye number 3. And just replace that outline. Boom, like that. And now we have our number 2 composition here. And I think I accidentally moved my camera. So let's move this in a little bit. And let's make sure. Yep, that's good. Making sure my... Oh, so I think I just need to move all this stuff back. There we go, just readjust all this. There we go. So there's number 2. And yeah, so this setup is very flexible because all you have to do is switch out your splines, whatever number or letter you're doing. You can even do like a whole entire logo with this and do an outline of the logo. Let's go ahead and adjust this light a little bit, bring in the fall off. But again, the colors are still the same, so you know the benefit of linking the 2 variation shaders together on the rounding and our main variation shader material is we can go in here and then adjust the seed. And this is going to look completely different. It's going to have a totally different color scheme that you can then render this out as well. And then you have this really nice transition from 1 to 2. So I can adjust the camera angle here. And I'm going happy with my shortcuts here. And do my camera, there we go. And do something like that. So we have this really nice angle to this one. It's different from number 3. And we still have the same undulation. Again, we can go in here and maybe slightly tweak this stuff as well, but I'm just going to leave it the same. But yeah, so then all you need to do is then render these 2 out. And then you have your nice little transition, and then you can keep building this up. You can start from 9 and go all the way down to 0 and have this really nice, cool Mograph-y countdown element going on, and you'll get a little tropical with it. But yeah, that's it for me. So we created some fun little animations. Let me bring this up. Some little tropical-y animations. We got some undulation stuff going on. We got a nice little countdown. We used Random Effectors with some Turbulence. We played around with the variation shader that comes with Cinema 4D R17. But you could always also just manually make your own materials in different colors and just put that into your cloner if you're using an older version. Or the Mograph color shader. There's a bunch of different ways, but variation shader is very nice and handy. And then we just animated our letters coming in, bouncing in, did some decaying, springy, curvy thingies. That's the official animation principle name. But yeah, that's it. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye, everybody.